Hi weaving friends, today I'm going to be sharing with you some new yarns that have arrived just this week. I'm going to tell you what they are, what I intend to do with them and where I got them from. This video is brought to you by the online weaving school. You can find a variety of classes there for all kinds of weavers, for all different levels, and a very welcoming community. I'll leave the link in the description down below so that you can go and check it out. As most of you know, we moved from the city recently to the country, and for the first time I have my very own studio and I have a lot of space. And for really all of this year I completely had to hold off on buying any new yarns because we were packing up the house and I just didn't want to have any more things coming in that then had to be packed and transported. And also I just haven't had an awful lot of time to weave this year, given that all my looms and everything were being packed into boxes. So by the time we actually got here and got settled in, I was absolutely raring to go with getting some of those new yarns that I had been wanting to buy. And just as a coincidence, they all happened to arrive or get here this week. So I thought it would be interesting for all of you if I talked about these yarns, and in particular the specifics of the yarns and what I intend to do with them, as a help to you to get to know these kind of yarns better and maybe branch out in the types of yarns that you're using. I am going to be mentioning the locations of all of the places where I got these yarns, and some of them are specific to Australia. But I think it's very important for fibre artists wherever you live to support your local yarn industries, and especially your little local yarn shops, your local mills and all those kind of places that really can't continue to produce unless people like us are supporting them. So I'm not an affiliate for any of these companies, although some of the yarns that I'm going to mention I will have affiliate links for down below. So the first yarns that I wanted to buy was some 8/4 cotton. Now these are pretty run-of-the-mill. If you've been weaving for some time, it's pretty likely that you have used these already, but strangely enough, I never did. I use 8/2 cotton constantly. It's one of my most used yarns, but I'd never used 8/4 because I just had never felt the need to for the things that I was weaving. However, one of the things that I wanted to do this year a bit more is use a little bit more of a variety of yarns, because so many of my students are international, and the bigger variety of yarns that I use, the more likely they're going to be able to find them in their own country. And so 8/4 cotton is one of those yarns that a lot of my students do use, and they often substitute an 8/2 cotton for. And I get a lot of questions about it and whether it's suitable for this project or that project of mine. And so I thought, well, it's about time I actually bought some and used it so that I can better advise people. Now, I make no secret that one of my favourite weaving yarn companies is Maurice Brassard in Canada. And we're lucky enough to be able to get these yarns in Australia through a supplier in Queensland called Thread Collective. All of the suppliers that I mentioned today, I will leave a link down below. If you're in Australia, you will definitely want to check out Thread Collective. There are so many beautiful weaving yarns there. The owner, Nikki, is marvellous. She'll help you and advise you if you need it. And also she posts out the yarns super duper fast. Okay, so a little bit more about 8/4 cotton. I did a wrap test on this and the wraps per inch came out at 20 wraps per inch. Divide that in half for your plain weave and you get 10 ends per inch. So if you're weaving this on a rigid head or loom, you would go for a 10 dent reed. If you wanted something a little bit denser, you could go for a 12, 12.5. And if you were weaving a twill, that would come out at around 13.4 ends per inch. You'd have to do some rounding depending on your project that you were weaving. You could either round up to 14, round down to 12 to make it even numbers easier on yourself, depending on what you wanted to do. So I just got the 8/4 in these two colours to begin with, but I can definitely see that I'll be adding more of these to my collection. Okay, the next yarns I wanted to talk about are these 8/8 cottons, also by Maurice Brassard. The colours are absolutely delightful. This colour here is aquamarine, which is like one of my most, I just seem to gravitate towards this I think I have aquamarine in just about every yarn that I actually have here in the studio. I seem to just not be able to help myself when I see this colour. So I bought these yarns because I'm working on my new class, Pick Up Perfection. And for the project, I wanted to use a cotton that was the right size for the project that I wanted to do, but also would be widely available to students, as I discussed before. So the specifics for this 8/8 cotton are, the wraps per inch came out at 14, which means the ends per inch for a plain weave would be around 7. So you'd be looking at maybe a 7.5 dent reed, an 8 dent reed you could go up to, and depending if you wanted something a bit thicker, you could go up to a 10 dent reed. Haven't tested it, I'm just giving educated guesses here. And for twill, I got around a 9.38, so twill, a 10 dent reed would be a good roundup for that one. By the way, if you're wondering how I do my set calculations, I'm going to leave you a link to some other videos that I already have down below. I've got one on that explains what set actually is, and then I've got another one that shows you how to use an inch ruler in order to get the correct set for the yarn and the project that you want to do. But in addition to that, if you are wanting to get your set for a twill project, then you take your wraps per inch. So if you don't know what wraps per inch are, look up that other set video first. And then you times that by 0.67. Now this is not like an exact science, but it's a good all-round figure that's going to give you like a really good ballpark figure for what you might want to set your twill at. I've used this formula ever since I started weaving twill, and it works really well. So back to the Pick Up Perfection class, we're going to be weaving a cushion or a pillow cover, and I wanted 2 yarns that would contrast really nicely for some varied pickup that we're going to be doing. But also to, be a bit of a colour pop, because I'm a bit of a fan of a good colour pop. And these 2 colours together, love them. So I'm excited to use this 8/8 cotton at the moment. And as it says on the label, it says 4-ply of 8/2, which just means imagine 4 strands of 8/2 cotton and they've been plied together. And that's the thickness that you get with this 8/8 cotton. This one is also available in Australia from Thread Collective. In the US, it's available directly from Maurice Brassard in Canada or from the Woolery. And I'll leave my affiliate link for the Woolery, for this yarn for the Woolery down below, because I am a Woolery affiliate. This next yarn, I have to say I'm super duper excited about this. I haven't had anything quite like this before, and I didn't actually know that the company existed. Now, the irony of this is that this company is about half an hour's drive from where I was previously living. Now it's hours away, but thankfully they do post. But I just thought that was funny. I discovered the company that had been so close to my location all this time after I moved away from there. But anyway, let me tell you about it. This is Superfine Merino. It's from Geelong Dyeing Company, is what they're called. This is sold as a 28/2 yarn. It is incredibly fine merino. You know that I love to use merino and I use it all the time. And something else that was really exciting to me, well, 2 things. All this wool is grown in my state of Victoria. So it's very local, and it's all dyed at the mill in Geelong. So it really satisfies my desire to buy local supplies wherever I can and support local businesses, and especially Australian farmers who work so hard to produce top quality stuff. So as I said, this is really, really fine. It is a little bit comparable to an 8/2 cotton, you can see here. But because it's wool, it is lighter and loftier. So in essence, it is much thinner than the 8/2, even though at sort of first looks, it looks a little bit similar in size. So the specifics for this wool, I got 40 wraps per inch, so that would be 20 ends per inch for a plain weave and a 26.8 for twill. But looking at this yarn, even though I've done the wraps, because I feel like it would need a closer set than that. And this is where you can use your set as a really good guide, but it's not always set in stone. It does depend on the yarn and the project. So I would be thinking, I'm going to be sampling with this before I actually weave with it. But I'm thinking that I might go up to 30 ends per inch. I'm going to test it. As to what I'm going to make with this, I'm thinking, as soon as I saw it, I thought of beautifully light, warm scarves, because another thing about this yarn is that it is just so beautifully soft. They sent me a little sample ring of these yarns before I purchased, because I really need to feel and touch yarns to know whether they're going to be suitable for wearing or not, because one merino is not like another. They're different microns, and that produces different softness and the way that it's spun and all of that. But this is delightfully soft. Even though it's wrapped on this cone tight, it's kind of squishy. So it's really lovely, and there's like this fuzz around the outside that I think would just be beautiful for some really lovely scarves. So I'm really looking forward to getting warped with this and testing it. Each cone comes in a 500 gram size. It's really very large, so I have plenty to play around with, and they have a heap of colours, all really lovely colours. Oh, another thing I should tell you about them is they do a colour matching service. This is really cool. You can send them a sample of a colour. It could be like a photo of a leaf, it could be an earring, it could be a piece of clothing that you have, and they will try to match the colour as best they can and custom dye it for you for just a few more dollars a cone. So that is a really cool option too. The next yarn I have to show you is this Lion brand Mandala. Now this one I actually got from Spotlight, which is, if you're in Australia, you'll know straight away what Spotlight is. But for those of you who don't know, it's kind of a large craft / Manchester haberdashery store. You can buy all kinds of things there. I guess it's a little bit, maybe an equivalent of the US Hobby Lobby. It has all kinds of things for crafters and homewares. So this one I also bought, it's an acrylic. I didn't do a set test on this one, but I'm thinking that I would use a 7.5 dent pedal for this one. I can see that just by looking at it. But what attracted me to this one were the colours and the softness. It's very, very soft. And I don't normally use acrylics. I do have a very large preference for using naturals, but I know that a lot of my students use acrylics and love them. And so this is once again a bid to use some yarns that are a little bit more universal. So plans for this one, I'm not sure yet. I think it would make a beautiful scarf because it's so soft. It'd be lovely to wear against your skin. And because of the colours radiating out and changing, that would also be beautiful in a scarf. Whether I'd use it for a warp or a weft, I don't know. I'd probably, one thing I would definitely do is whatever I was pairing it with, I would pair it with a solid. So if I use this for the warp, I'd use a solid colour for the weft, probably a medium to dark grey. If I was using this as weft, then I would use the solid warp. Just because when you have colours like this, shifting gradually, you really want to show that off. And so I think I'm just going to, this is going to be one of those yarns that will just sit in the studio for a little while, provide a lovely bit of colour and inspiration, and I'll decide at some point what it's going to become. All right, the next yarn I bought from a local shop that is like a quilting / yarn shop, and they also sell curtains and blinds and that sort of thing. But I found this shop in a country town, and if you're interested in checking out the shop, they're called Yarram Drapery. It's a really impressive little shop. I actually posted about this on Instagram, and the owner, Zita, let me take some photos inside so that I could show that on Instagram too. It's just a beautiful little shop, and they've just packed it full of stuff. But I guess Zita just has a knack for packing things in neatly, because if I tried to put that much stuff into that space, I'm sure I'd make a mess of it. But in her shop, it all just looks beautiful. It's very cozy and quaint. All types of pretty fabrics, and a couple of wools of yarn, which is really lovely, embroidery threads, all that kind of stuff. So I'll definitely be visiting there again. But what I picked up there was this Noro yarn. What really stood out to me about this yarn was the colours. I just think the colours are beautiful. They appeal to me very much. This is, in case you're interested, this is number 18, lot B. And once again, I'm not really sure what I'm going to do with this yarn, but I've always wanted to try Noro yarn. The reason I hadn't tried it up until now is it's really expensive. This 200 gram ball was $50, which is definitely a lot more than I'm used to paying for this kind of yarn. But I know once again that a lot of people use it, and so I wanted to branch out and try it. And as I said, once I saw those colours, I was pretty much sold. It's not as soft as I would like it to be if I was going to use it for an item of clothing. I think perhaps it might be better to go with the Noro silk blend. That would likely be much softer than this wool. But it's made in Japan and it's very beautiful, and so I had to it had to come home with me. I do have a half idea that I might use it as an accent in another larger project that I'm going to make, paired with a solid colour, and maybe just have some stripes of it in the warp. But I'm pretty undecided about that as well. And so I think this is another one that's just going to sit for a little bit until the appropriate idea comes to me. This is a fairly thick yarn, so I would be looking at a 7.5 dent heddle. The set would be pretty close, that would make it a pretty thick fabric. A 5 dent could be more suitable. But as I said, and it's a little bit thick and thin as well, like some parts are fluffier and thicker, and others are thin, very much like a hand spun. But that's why I think it would go well as an accent in a piece rather than using this yarn exclusively for the piece. Now the last yarn I got is this little 50 gram cone. It's called Steam. And it comes in a few different colours. I also bought this from the Thread Collective in Queensland, and it's quite fine. It's labelled as a 46.2, which is very fine, but I've been wanting to try a yarn like this for quite some time. So this has elastin in it, and it's the type of yarn that you use if you want some sort of texture or movement in your finished piece. So the idea is that you would use this with another yarn in your project, and then when you get to the wet finish, it would collapse or contract, and that would have an effect on the overall project. So I definitely need to do some sampling with this to see exactly what I want to do with it. But I do have some ideas for projects because, as I said, I've wanted to try this for a really long time. If you're interested in what I'm talking about with this yarn, you might want to look up collapse weave or weaving with elastic. There's another type, it's called, I think it's called coal elastic or coal elastic. I can't remember it. It's really hard to get. So I was happy to see that Nikki was stocking this one because that gave me the opportunity to order it with my other yarns and to give it a try. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this little discussion of my yarns today, and thank you for letting me share my excitement with you. I just love getting new yarn. Opening each package is just like having a birthday or Christmas. The only problem is that I want to warp up every single one of these yarns to try them out, so I'll have to try and hold myself back on that one. If you don't follow me on Instagram yet, I recommend that you do, because that's one of the places that I sort of update most of my process photos these days. So whatever I'm weaving, I'll be photographing and sharing that on Instagram. I'll be giving extra information about it. In my stories, I'll have little flashes of what I'm doing throughout the day. And it's a great place to connect with you all and share all different aspects of my life with you. Also, don't forget to check out my blog. I've actually got a new post there that I posted yesterday on my biggest weaving mistake ever. So I hope you can check that out. All the links to everything I've mentioned will be in the box down below. Well, I hope you have a really fantastic week, and until next time, happy weaving.